Hello and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the Ernest Borgnine of board game review shows. My name is Cody, and you know, kids, it's never okay to flip people off, but it is okay to flip cards in this new card flipping game from Level 99 Games called Sellswords. In Sellswords from Level 99 Games, two players are going to attempt to lay down some very special cards in order to gain the most points. Now, at the beginning of the game, what you're going to do is pick a terrain. This is where you're going to play. Essentially, a terrain can have nothing, or there's some different terrains that have certain modifiers in the game. Then what you're going to do is deal out 12 sellsword cards in the middle of the table. Now, each sellsword has a red side or a blue side, depending on the player that's going to manipulate them. Now, on the four sides of the card, there is a number, and the number can vary, it can be different, but essentially that is the card's attack value on that particular side. But also, each card is unique, and each card is going to have very special powers, ways that it's going to interact with other cards around it. Essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to draft those cards. So one player can pick which card he wants of the 12, then the next player, until each player has 6 cards. Then the game is played by one player laying down his card somewhere around the original terrain card. Then the next player lays down a card. Then the next player lays down a card. But as you're laying down cards, funky things are going to happen. You're going to compare the numbers on the side of the card next to the card that you're adjacent to. So, for instance, if you lay down a card that has a 3 attack value next to a card that only has a 1 attack value, you can flip that one over and it now becomes your color card. You can do this to the different cards on the different sides as you're placing the cards on the table. But when those special abilities kick in, it's going to be a game changer. For instance, you might be able to affect cards maybe 2 spaces away instead of being adjacent to you. Some of the cards let you go ahead and lay down the card, but as soon as you lay it down and win the battle, you have to flip that card you just played over, even if you got to flip down adjacent cards. There are some cards that affect scoring at the end of the game as well. So you've got all of these different funky powers going on, these kind of random events that are going to trigger when certain cards are laid out. So you're never quite certain who's got the upper hand until those last cards come out. Now, the goal of the game then is to try to have more of your colors showing than your opponent. So if you're red, you want to have, of course, the most red cards up. If you're blue, you want to have the most blue cards. Once all of the cards are placed, you're going to do scoring. And scoring is played by adding up numbers of cards that you have on each row and then each column. You consult a chart that tells you exactly how many points you get for having a certain number of your color in a row and a column. Then you play it a second time, because the game takes place over the course of 2 rounds. After you play 2 rounds of the game, you add the scores together from your first game and your second game, and whoever has the highest total wins Sellswords. Now, the theme of Sellswords is essentially these are mercenaries, and they will change sides very easily, very quickly. They've got no compunctions about doing that, and that's why they flip back and forth throughout the game. Now, that's very cool. That's very interesting. The theme, however, is not strong. This is not a heavy game. I mean, obviously, it takes place in 10, 15 minutes. If you're experienced, you can just go right through this game. So don't go into this game expecting a very heavy theme. It ain't there. In fact, the game feels very abstract. It feels as though you're playing an abstract game with just a very light theme kind of painted onto it. Now, the artwork is cool. The artwork is fun. It's kind of that kind of Japanime or 8-bit kind of artwork there, and it's pretty cool. It's very reminiscent in its artwork to the Pixel Tactics games from Level 99 Games. It's also reminiscent of the Pixel Tactic games in some of the mechanics and the way those cards come up. Now, in Pixel Tactics, of course, you've got different abilities depending on where your cards are placed. Here, it's just one ability. But that same kind of idea of just those different player powers pops up, and it keeps the game fresh, it keeps it interesting, and for a light game, for just a 2-player opener, it's fun. It's a good little game. You know, if you like light card games like this, if you like just really light 2-player games, this is, I think, one you're definitely going to want to check out. The recommendation for the discriminating gamer is, if you like these kinds of games, you're going to want to buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on Facebook, or on the Discriminating Gamer's webpage, thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and I like to pronounce it Sellswords.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Yes, winter will soon be here. Ooh, is that scary if I send it that way? I don't know. Is it not the 30s?